All right. So our main goal for today is that by the end of the presentation, you're able to produce a first draft of a personal statement, be that it for a fellowship or for grad school. And we are going to be providing example for both things. So Jody is going to be addressing mainly graduate school and law school, and I'll talk about specific fellowships. And we want to discuss and identify best practices and some of the common pitfalls as you write and approach these personal statements.
All right, so now we're going to talk about our agenda for today. We're going to start out with talking about some goals for the personal statement, touching on some common mistakes. We'll also talk about the structure of personal statements, including your academic work so far, where your work is going, the fit paragraph, and then we'll also talk about the drafting process, which is unfortunately an integral part of writing and writing well. We'll talk about some examples. Then we'll have some next steps and questions. And then, and then we'll close with some questions at the end, I should say. Okay, so let's get going and start talking about the goals for the personal statement. Now, before we get started with that, I want to hear from you all. What are some things that you've heard about what the personal statement is supposed to accomplish? Go ahead and put your responses in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Go ahead. Talk about future research goals. Yes, thank you. What else? Show, don't tell. Yes, you want to show graduate schools why you're a good fit and not tell. Perfect. What else do we have? How graduate school / a fellowship will help you in your future aims. Yes, thank you, Kelsey. Yes, perfect. Okay, so it seems like we have a quiet group. Maybe everybody's eating sandwiches. I understand. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what the goals are. So the first and foremost thing, and if there's nothing else that you get from this presentation, it should be this. You should know that the primary goal of the personal statement is to communicate your fit for graduate school or a fellowship program, right? Next, and this is especially important for PhD and fellowship programs, you need to be able to situate your work in the field. Academic work is not supposed to be pursued in a vacuum, so you want to understand where your work resides or where you want your work to reside. For academic or thesis or PhD and fellowship programs, you also want to propose a project. Thankfully, the personal statement isn't a contract. No one's going to hunt you down if you change anything, but you do want to show admissions committees that you understand the process of doing research. And they want to know that you are able to come up with a reasonable, doable project. You also want to frame your story in a way that encompasses your academic journey, okay? So not just personal, not just, I was born in the river down by the sea. No, you want to talk about your academic journey. Again, you want to be specific about the institution that you want to attend or the fellowship, and why you two are going to be a good match. And then finally, you want to talk about how this graduate program or fellowship experience is going to play a role in your career. So now that we've talked about the goals of the personal statement, let's cover some common mistakes. So one was that I just kind of alluded to, and it's getting too personal, right? So I guess the name is kind of like a misnomer in that way, like you're not supposed to get too personal. The statement is going to be read by lots of different people. So admissions people in the admissions office, faculty, people that you're not going to know. So you want to keep some personal details to yourself. Keep in mind that your goal is to do academic pursuits. So you want to balance those personal details with academically driven reasons to pursue graduate work, law school or a fellowship. Next is a lack of clear organization. As I kind of alluded to before, drafting is going to really help you with this process. Next, being general in your reasons for a fit to a program is something that is not great, right? You want to be specific. You want to talk about your specific interests and the specific things that are drawing you to a program. So kind of unlike undergrad, where you're, just kind of talking about why you want to go to college and maybe why you want to pursue a major or maybe not. In graduate school, especially at the doctoral level and fellowships, you want to be very specific about why you're pursuing things. So make sure that you're doing that in your personal statement. Next, the personal statement is not a place for humility, right? So it would be an honor. I would be, no, you have already done the work to prepare yourself for this next stage of your career. So you want to make sure that you're showing graduate admissions councils and fellowship boards that you are ready for this, okay? You want to let them know that you're a baddie, okay? You also want to create a cohesive narrative about your experiences, not just list them. So not, first I took this class, then I took this class, then I wrote this paper. You want to write a narrative. You want to connect those experiences together. So make sure that you're not doing that in your personal statement. Finally, or next, I should say, is projecting how you would plan to use your graduate work broadly, okay? So for most people getting a PhD, they do want to be a professor or they want to be an academic or something like that. You want to make sure that you're being more specific than just saying, I want to be a professor, I want to teach. You want to be specific. You also want to communicate to the school that you have a good understanding of this investment and how it will help you go to where you want to go. The same is true for a fellowship. You want to let them know that you understand that taking a year, 2 years out of your life is going to be a good investment for you. And then finally is not answering the prompt. Okay, make sure that you are answering the prompt, reading it and rereading it in order to ensure that you understand what's being asked of you. So let's talk about structure. I want to emphasize to you that these are all guidelines to help you get started and not like, a baking recipe or something that you need to follow to a T. In your first paragraph, you want to briefly introduce yourself and give a high-level overview of why you're going to be a good fit. So a common pitfall is thinking that, you are going to bore someone who's looking at your portfolio, an admissions person, with restating certain details, right? So you might not want to say like, this person already knows that I am majoring in anthropology or whatever. You don't know that. You don't know what order folks are looking at your materials in. So it does not hurt to restate. I, went to Barnard College. I majored in this. This is what I want to do, etc. It is okay to state that multiple times across the different parts of your application. So in your first paragraph, you want to briefly introduce yourself, like I said. Next, you also want to talk about your important academic work up to this point, and then kind of work backwards. So kind of like a resume where you have, your most recent experience first, and then you move into your earlier experiences. You want to kind of set yourself up in that way. For most of you, when you talk about your most important academic work, it's going to be your thesis, right? So you want to use that as a cornerstone of your talk about your academics. You'll talk about the courses that you've taken as part of your academic foundation as well. So in the first 3 paragraphs, well, I guess in paragraphs 2 and 3, we're talking mostly about the past. Now let's look forward to the future in the second half of your personal statement. What do you want to do as a grad student or a fellow in the program? What are you hoping to do beyond that? That's what you're going to be covering in paragraphs 4 and 5. And then finally, you want to close with talking about your specific fit for the program, whether it's law school, a fellowship, or graduate school. Not just, I want to be, Fulbright ETA teacher, but I want to be a Fulbright ETA teacher in this specific place. I understand what's going to be asked of me, and these are the reasons why this program is going to be a good fit for me.
All right, so we would like to spend some time in discussing some examples of best practices on how to actually structure this. So when we tell you to make that introduction and make that first paragraph as a thesis, as your argument, and then talk about your experiences, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And as Jody said, these are guidelines. These are ways in which I have seen many successful drafts, but this is certainly not prescriptive. You're not going to be more successful if you just copy and paste or just like screenshot these into your actual statement, but rather look at them and get inspiration and see which are the best fit for the experiences that you want to talk about. So the goal of that first paragraph is to just draw the reader in. As Jody said, you never know what's the order in which your materials are being read. Maybe they already looked at your transcript, or maybe the personal statement is that first approach that they're having at you. But anyone that has met with me has heard me say this. Think that your evaluators and reviewers are going to have a stack of 80 applications that day. If you are number 75, think about how you want to stand out. You know, this person is tired. They're probably waiting to finish off the stack before they get lunch. They haven't had their second coffee today. Like, what you're going to say in that first line might be a deal breaker. So no pressure at all. Start with a catchy opener. This is the place that I always advise to get a little cheesy, to have a cliched opening for that first draft. It is probably gonna change as you make edits, and you are most likely gonna move away from that. Baby. It's gonna go over revisions and we're gonna work on it. But this is the place to tell us that you have worked with toddlers for 10 years, since you were a teenager yourself. This is a place to tell us a fun fact, something improbable, or anything that's going to make the reader laugh, or just get that, oh, okay, I'm interested in this person. I really look forward to see what is it that's gonna come next. And then once you have captured the attention of the reader, go ahead and make your claim. Why is it that you're a strong candidate? Why is it that you absolutely want to go there? An anecdote is a good place to start if you're not sure. Think about, again, things that are funny that might not have a place in any other part of the application, and bring them in here. A structure after that first anecdote is, you know, tell us that you graduated from Barnard. Tell us the class. I recently was evaluating an application from someone that said that when they were a teenager, they thought they were psychic because they got the feeling of deja vu quite often. And yet they never saw the pandemic coming in their first year. So you see how that's like sort of a funny use of this, like, oh, I had this as a teenager, but it would have never prepared me for what my college life as a freshman was going to be. So use that opportunity to leverage what's going to happen next. Mention your thesis if you wrote one. Mention the specific school. You always want to make that claim and connection between your candidacy and the program, be it a graduate school or a fellowship, in that first paragraph. You shouldn't keep moving and making different arguments before stating that very clearly. I think we can move on to paragraph 2. And here we split it into what this looks like for grad school and fellowship, because even though the structure overall should be similar, there's some things that are going to be a little different. So for fellowships, this paragraph is where you start to give us a background of yourself, of your preparation, that trajectory. This is where you start to introduce influential people or experiences during your time at college, or perhaps even post-graduation if you are an alum. And this is where you tell us why. Again, I like to ask a question like, so why should we care about this? What is it about your work or your candidacy or this specific program that's relevant for the committee to know? in grad school, I think we can open that up, Jody. This is a place where you can then deepen a little bit on your senior thesis. If you have work that's published or that senior thesis, tell us about what were the claims that you made in your work. Tell us about the methods. If you did primary source research, if you interviewed people, you can do a little bit of name dropping, talk about faculty or people that you've worked in the past. You should absolutely also mention the so what, like why is it that this argument is either novel or important, or how is it that it's informed your current interest and your contribution to the field. Like, is this something that your professor never thought about, or is this something that you were pushed to use a different method? Tell us how is it that it fits within the larger discipline. Any questions so far? Again, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll read them out loud. With that in mind, we can move on to paragraph 3, which is where you start to move into the specific program that you're applying. You have told us why you're a strong candidate. You have backed up that argument by giving us an example of either the senior thesis or work that you've done in this area. So now start drawing the connection between this program and what you've done in the past. A common example is saying, this fellowship is going to build on this work that I've already started, and this is how I plan to do it. This is why it's logical for me to do it. Or maybe it's where you're going to turn gears. Maybe you're going to say, I've already done this work in the lab. Now I'm really, really looking forward to go out and interview people, or I'm interested to work in statistics. This is where you make that rationale of how is it that this program fits with that trajectory. And for graduate school, very similar. Here you can talk about specific courses that have influenced your trajectory, mention your recommenders, or if you've been in contact with specific faculty at your institution that you're applying. And here's where you tailor this to the specific institution. So mention the program, mention the people that you're looking forward, as well as the resources that you want to tap into once you're there. And with that, we can move on to a little exercise that we have for you.
Yeah, so now we want you to take a few minutes to do some self-reflection about your own academic experiences. And we've put a few questions on the screen to help you kind of start thinking about how you are going to structure the first part of your personal statement. So we're going to pause the recording for right now, and then we'll give you. All right, so we're back now to talk about structure. So as I mentioned before, the first few paragraphs or the first half of your personal statement is going to be talking about the past. It's going to be talking about your foundations and what you've already done. And the second half is going to be talking about the future. So you're going to be focusing on what you want to accomplish next. Think about what you like about your work and how you want to move it forward. Okay, you definitely want to choose something that you like, because whether you're doing a master's or a doctorate, you're going to be dealing with this topic and very intricate details about this topic for years. So make sure that you're choosing something that you like. You want to think about that topic, think about the things that you like, and think about how you want to move it forward. You're going to talk about how, as a graduate student, you'll either pursue a similar topic to your thesis, but perhaps with new methods, or if you like the methods that you used, you might think about a different topic. So maybe before you did, for my doctorate, I used phenomenology. Maybe I would want to use that for a different context in the future if I were ever to go back to school again, or maybe I would choose a completely different topic. So you want to think about how either of those experiences, or even something that you were doing that is completely different, is going to set the stage for new directions and methods and topic. Next, you want to talk about how your work aligns with the department or program to which you're applying. Here's your chance to be specific, okay? Take some time to discuss programs, institutes, partnerships, classes, etc. To talk about how you're going to conduct your work. This is a chance to integrate your research of the institution into your wishes as a graduate student. So for example, if you wanted to work here, if you wanted to be a grad student here at Barnard, maybe you would talk about the Center for Research in Women and how you would, your work dealt with women and how that institute is going to help you move your work forward. And you want to talk about why that's critical to your work, right? Why is this institution, this program, whatever, like, why is this going to help your work get to the next level? Finally, you want to talk about your life beyond graduate school. Use your imagination. There's a difference between being, if you want to be a professor, there's a difference between being a professor at somewhere like West Point versus somewhere like Morehouse College or Baruch College. Take some time to think about your life, what you want to be, what you envision yourself as a professional being, and you want to talk about it in these paragraphs.
So how does this look like for fellowships? Paragraphs 4 and 5 is where you strengthen that claim about the specific fellowship program and the specific country that you're applying or a specific mission. You've already told us about where you intend to go and how you're qualified in the previous paragraphs. So here is where you outline the things that you're interested in exploring and how it connects back. Similar to grad school, is there the specific topic, a new topic that you're implementing some new methods or you're exploring from a different perspective? Maybe it's just a different country. Maybe you already did your research here in the US and now you're looking at behavior of bees in, I don't know, Icelandic countries. This is someone that's actually applying to a Fulbright now. But draw that connection between the experiences that have been foundational during your time as an undergrad and how is it that you're going in a new direction, or how is it that you're building on that portfolio of research or the experience itself. If you have done an undergraduate degree in a specific area that's not logically related to what you're proposing to do, this is also where you address it. So if you are an engineering and computer science major and you want to do an English teaching assistantship with Fulbright, this is where you say, how is it that you're qualified? This is where you tell the committee, these are my skills from the lab. These are my skills as a peer writing tutor in science. This is what I plan to bring in, and this is how I'm going to use it in the classroom through talking about science and teaching English through science or volunteering for the math class. And this is where you sort of draw that connection between the specific fellowship, the country, organization that you plan to connect, and how is it that it's critical for you. There's fellowships like Fulbright that are going to ask you to be as specific as the city. You want to go to Madrid in Spain and you want to teach this specific community. There's some other places that you can apply to the whole country, like India. You don't know where you're going to be placed in the whole continent. So it is a delicate balance that responds to what we said first. You need to read that prompt. You need to be sure to tailor your answer to what the program is expecting and get as specific as you can within the limits of what's been provided to you.
Okay, so finally, you're going to end your personal statement talking very specifically about the place that you want to go to. This is what's called the fit paragraph. Obviously, you're going to be peppering little details throughout your personal statement to talk about, the program or the fellowship or, whatever it is that you're interested in. But here is when you really are going to drive it home. So here are some areas that you might want to focus on. So first we have academic resources. Obviously, first and foremost, you're going to talk about faculty. This is especially true if you're thinking about a PhD program, because you are going to have a connection with the faculty that is closer than, at the master's level or at the undergraduate level. So you definitely are going to want to talk about faculty. You also want to talk about libraries and archives, right? Every school has some kind of niche area that they have invested a lot of money and a lot of resources into making some kind of institute, right? So this is where you're going to show that you know that and talk about why that institute and that investment that they've made is going to be good for you. You'll also talk about research centers. Same reason. They have all this money, they're doing all these things, they're funding research centers. Talk about how you're going to use those research centers. And then you're also going to talk about curricular initiatives. So sometimes in different programs, they have a specific programmatic focus or initiative. It could be for a year, it could be like that's what the center or whatever the program is about. You want to point to that very specifically and about how that's going to impact your work. Additionally, you want to talk about the fact that your research that you're doing is not just probably going to be related to like one thing. So it's not going to be only about economics. It's going to be about Chinese immigration. So you want to talk about how you are going to use resources from the history department or the Department of Asian and Pacific Islander Studies departments, or whatever other departments that are going to contribute to your work. You're going to talk about that in this part. You also want to talk about things like the Career Center. Every school has a Career Center because they want to make sure that you have a job afterwards. So you can talk about that. This is especially good if the place that you're going to has a very specific focus or a mission to help certain kinds of careers. This is especially true for law school folks. So if you want to be a certain kind of lawyer, you can look on the school's webpage. There are what's called 509 disclosures. They're required for every single law school. You look at that and it tells you basically things like where people were hired, what kind of industries they were hired into, salary, things like that. It's the career office that helps coordinate things like that. So you definitely want to make sure that you're looking at that. Again, intra and inter-institutional partnerships. So maybe, you're going to school A, but they have a very strong connection with school B. Talk about that. So I went to NYU and I know that NYU and Columbia are very close. They have interlibrary situations. They have class share kind of things. If that's the school that you're interested in, I would talk about that. And then you also, if you're interested in fellowships, you want to talk about the local organizations that you are going to want to partner with while you're in the country that you're going to. And then finally, you want to talk about other affinities. So geography is key, right? Because if you're thinking about something like a PhD program, that can be many years. That can be, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, depending on the kind of work that you're doing and, whatever else is going on in the world, right? So these admissions committees want to know that if you get to wherever it is that you get to, that you're going to feel comfortable there. Unlike the undergraduate level, at the doctoral level, when you're looking for a program, it might be in an institution that you never thought you would want to go to, but the program is maybe the strongest in the country. I'll give you an example. When I was looking at doctoral programs or thinking about a certain kind of doctoral program, I wanted to do Latin American and Caribbean studies. And one of the strongest programs in the country was in Wisconsin. Now, to me, that's pretty counterintuitive, but it's because they had the resources, they had the faculty, they had all these things that would make that program very strong. So me as a Floridian, I would definitely want to talk about my geographic affinity to Wisconsin, or how I was going to, fare the winters, coming from Florida, right? So this is a chance for you to talk about, if there might be a red flag or something like that. Talk about that. You also want to talk about if you've had any other experiences with the department or program. So let's say you attended an event, or you work with a faculty member, or maybe a club that you're in, participated in something with another club at that school. You want to talk about your connections with that school that you already have in this fit paragraph. And then finally, any other collaborations that you've done. So again, if there's a faculty, situation that you've had with a faculty member at the school that you're going to, you want to talk about that. If you've used anything in the past from that place, this is where you want to talk about it. You definitely want to help admissions committees understand without a shadow of a doubt why you're going to be a good fit for this program. So
should we devote just like 1 minute to this and then move on so we have enough time? Looking at the clock and it's 1:48.
Yeah, so take a moment to think about this. We're not going to do a group share for this, but think about these two questions. And I want to remind you also that we will be sending out the slides afterwards, so you don't have to kind of furiously write anything down. We will be sharing this with you. So here are some things that you can think about as you're trying to put this part of your personal statement together. So I want to take a moment to talk about law school statements. So in addition to the personal statements, there are also a couple of other writings that law schools might want you to submit. So the first one of those is a diversity statement. This is a supplemental essay that can fill any remaining gaps so that admissions readers have the clearest picture of you, okay? This is a chance for you to talk about your uniqueness and why the diverse situation that you might come from is going to make you an asset to the classroom. So it's not just demographic, it could be identity or socioeconomic differences. So again, being someone from Florida going to Wisconsin, if this was a law school situation, maybe I would talk about that. Maybe I would talk about how important it is to have the Southern perspective in the classroom, right? You want to think about life experiences, worldview, group specific affiliations, anything that is going to help set you apart from other folks. This essay or the statement is shorter than the personal statement, but longer than supplemental essays that you might be asked to write. So you don't have to go into like too much detail. And again, you want to keep your personal details to yourself and just kind of talk, in a way that's not traumatic about what makes you, what diverse perspective you can bring into the classroom. Law schools will also sometimes ask for supplemental essays. These are questions that are unique to each school's application. So once you apply to a certain school, they might post some additional questions. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reading the prompt and understanding it and responding to it. These are typically brief. They're shorter than the regular personal statement. So you want to make sure that you're staying within those bounds. And then finally, you might want to add an addendum, okay? Or an addendum, I should say. This is a place where you can discuss any potential quote unquote red flags. So when I say red flags, I mean, maybe you had a semester academically that doesn't look like the other semesters. Maybe something happened during that semester, or maybe you had something like that would call attention to your character and fitness portion of your portfolio, and you want to explain it. So things to keep in mind are this: you want to keep the tone positive. So the thing happened, you learned from it, and now you're ready to move on, right? If it's something bad, let's say bad, you know what I'm saying? Something that is a red flag, okay? You want to include relevant details. So if this was like a situation where you got written up or something like that, just include the relevant details, take responsibility if it's applicable. And then, like I said, keep it positive and only complete it if it's necessary. So if you got a B plus in a class and it's like your only B plus, that's not, you don't need an addendum for that, right? But like I said, if it's something that is way out of character for you, like I said, you are, a 3.8 student, and then one semester you got like a 2.0, and it turns out, something bad happened to you that semester, this would be the place where you would write an addendum. If you took the LSAT and you got a 150, and then the next time you took it, you got a 180, you would want to write an addendum talking about why your score jumped 30 points, right? So anything that is going to be out of the ordinary, it's not required unless it is required. So like I said, if there's something that you need to report on your character and fitness, that would be the only time when it is like really required.
Drafting. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. You should expect to write multiple drafts. Successful fellowship candidates that I've worked with have anywhere from 3 to 14 drafts. So it's all over the place. You should really lower the expectations for greatness in the first try. This is something that I cannot emphasize enough. That first draft that you're gonna write, it's gonna be mediocre at best, and it's only gonna get better after that. I certainly want to give you the sense that once you start drafting, you are going to do a first approach, and it's sort of just putting everything into paper, making your arguments, and then you should work with us to refine your arguments and with your peers and faculty and so on and so forth. Again, as we say here, multiple outlines, bad drafts, mediocre drafts are very useful because you are going to get more and more comfortable, and you're going to be able to parse out what is the narrative, what is the thread that's connecting the different experiences that make you a good candidate and that make this choice of a school or a fellowship make sense for you. And when in doubt, come talk to us. I think that the purpose of that first draft is to get all of your experiences, or get as much experiences and as much of the content down, and then you can work on organizing it to make sense. Next up, we want to offer you a couple of examples. We have examples from fellowships and grad school and law school. So I'll do mine very quickly. This is an example of a successful personal statement for someone who applied to a Fulbright in France. This was for them to pursue a master's program. You can see the opening. She starts with, when I think of home, I picture the color green. So what does she mean by green? And then she goes on, the shelter my imagination, where she grew up, and you have that sort of hook. What is it that green means to you? That can mean pretty much anything. And then she transitions to the experience in New York, moving from a rural town to her experience at Barnard. And then she goes right on, at Barnard College, my freshman year. This is how I did this transition. And then she goes on and tells us about some more background in terms of her experience at Barnard and how this has set up the tone for what comes next. So a good opener that draws the reader in, transition to college, and moving us through the narrative. And I'll pass it back to Jody.
Okay, so here is an example from somebody that's currently in a PhD program. I've altered it to protect this person's identity. So yeah, so first, this person starts out with an anecdote. They put you right there where they're thinking. At the height of the coronavirus pandemic, I returned home to Puerto Rico. Yeah, there was an island-wide anxiety over the supply chain, resulting in food shortages and empty supermarket shelves. So this person is putting you right there emotionally where they are, right? This is a very good opener, right? We were all there. we remember the beginning of the pandemic. This person is telling you, okay, this is what it's like in Puerto Rico. This is what happened, right? Then they transition into talking about the roots of their research questions. So it's not just that they saw this happening, they started to, think about how this was going to connect to their research. So they connect, they, have like a little transition sentence, and then they really go into the roots of their research. Then they continue. They talk about their thesis background. So they talk about the work that they've already done while they were at Barnard. They discuss their methodology. They go on a little bit more. And then they talk about what they hope to do with graduate education, right? And then they close this part of the statement with why this work is important. The so what question. I don't live in Puerto Rico. Why should I care, right? It talks about why this should matter. Then I want to give a quick view of a law school diversity statement. This, again, is anonymized. So they kind of start out with a little bit of background about themselves. So this is closer to the end of the statement. But they talk about the perspective that they have already contributed to the college classroom, okay? And then they close it with a perspective that they hope to contribute in the law school classroom, or what they think they can contribute in the law school classroom. So this is an example of somebody who is from Colombia, and they talk about how their background as someone who's Colombian and international student is going to contribute to their time as a law student at a law school in the United States.
So sort of to start wrapping up here, we want to let you go with the sense that you have the support of us at Beyond Barnard in this process. All the way from the beginner stages of brainstorming, as you're starting to think about what are some of the ideas that you want to include in that statement, how to split them. This is a question that I get a lot. What do I include in my research statement versus my personal statement? Or in the case of law school, the diversity statement. We are here as you start thinking and organizing your thoughts on this. At least I'm available to work with you in every step of the way, to provide you feedback in each draft, provide a final set of eyes to check for consistency, cohesion. Do you have an argument? How is it that you could make it better? And there's also other resources at Barnard for you. You could work with the writing fellows. Faculty are an amazing resource. Even your recommenders and other people that know about your program and know about your trajectory could be a resource also to provide you feedback in that writing process. With that, we are right at 2. I'll send it back to Jody to wrap up.
Yeah, just to wrap up quickly, we will have the slides available. We're going to send this and the recording. But once you have everything settled, here are some things that you should think about. You need to think of your application as a cohesive unit, right? So the various parts of the components are supposed to showcase different parts of yourself. Think about your personal brand and how you want it to shine through all those parts of your application. Be sure to read all instructions carefully and then read them again to make sure you understand. Center yourself in all of your writing. You're the main character. This should be about you. Try to start early so that you have time for multiple drafts. As Donna mentioned, it could be 3 drafts, it could be 30 drafts. Make sure that you have time for that. And then edit, edit, edit. And then I want to take a moment to thank you all for coming. It's been really great to have you. Here's our information. My name again is Jody Dublin. I deal mostly with graduate and professional school stuff, but I also do regular career counseling. And then my colleague, Donna Munoz Pacheco, does fellowships. Yes, only fellowships. We are happy to help you with anything. We're going to stop the recording now and then give you a moment to